Norman's cooking show. Pizza. Once upon a time there is Norman, and he said, I'm going to have a cooking show. So Norman gets ready, and he says, where is my chef's hat? I know, the closet. So Norman goes to the closet, and he says, where is that stupid chef's hat? And he threw out some toys, hats, shorts, a toy monkey, some balls, and he said, aha, found it, and he put it on his head, and he said, wow, I look so cool, said Norman. Let's see the next part. And Norman said, I will need to get a recipe book. Now, where can I get one? And Norman is thinking, and he said, I know, the cupboard. So Norman goes to the cupboard, and he says, now where is that recipe book? And he threw out a toy robot, a toy submarine, a toy rocket ship, a toy pig, a toy sheep, a toy dog, a toy cow, a toy horse. And then he said, aha, found it. Let's look at the recipes what I should cook, said Norman. Let's see the next part, when he looks at his recipe book. So Norman looks at the recipe book, and he says, let's see, what should I cook? Chocolate biscuit cake? Nope. Chocolate chip cookies? Nope. Vegetable soup? Nope. Pizza? Yes, I will cook pizza. Pizza is my favorite. I'm going to cook some pizza today. So Norman takes his book with him to the kitchen. Let's see the next part. So Norman goes to the kitchen, and he says, before I start cooking, I will wash my hands. So Norman washes his hands, and he says, I'm going to add soap, and washing my hands. Suddenly, Norman splashes water all over the kitchen, and he says, all done. Now I will dry my hands. So Norman dries the hands, and he says, I am done drying my hands. Let's get cooking. Let's see the next part, when he gets the ingredients. Okay, let's get the ingredients, said Norman. The first ingredient is flour. So Norman gets the flour. The second ingredient is sugar. So Norman gets the sugar. The third ingredient is eggs. So Norman gets the eggs. The fourth ingredient is butter. So Norman gets the butter. And the fifth ingredient is milk. So Norman gets the milk. And he says, I am ready. So Norman gets started on cooking. Let's see the next part. Okay, the first step is a whole bowl of flour. So Norman pours the flour into the bowl. The second step is putting sugar. So Norman puts the sugar in the bowl. And now, we have to mix. So Norman gets on mixing. La 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 la. Mixing my ingredients. La 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 la. Mixing my ingredients. So Norman is finished mixing. And he says, next we have to crack an egg. So Norman cracks an egg. The next ingredient is milk. So Norman pours the milk into the bowl and now it's time to mix again. So Norman continues on mixing. La 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 la. Mixing my ingredients. La 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 la. Mixing my ingredients. Okay, the final thing is butter. So Norman puts the butter in the bowl and now it's time to mix once again. So Norman continues on mixing. La 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 la. Mixing my ingredients. La 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 la. Mixing my ingredients. Alright, now I got my pizza dough. Now it's time to roll the dough until it is flat. Let's see the next part. So Norman gets a rolling pin, and rolls the dough, and he sings a song. La 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 la. Rolling my pizza dough. La 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 la. Rolling my pizza dough. Okay, now it's time to put tomato sauce into the pizza. So Norman gets the tomato sauce and spreads it on the pizza. And Norman says, I'm going to put cheese. So Norman puts cheese on his pizza, and he says, time to put it in the oven to cook. So Norman plays video games while waiting for the pizza to cook. Let's see the next part. Suddenly, Norman says, I smell smoke. So Norman goes to the kitchen again, and he says, oh fuck, the pizza is overcooked. Mom, get over here right now. And Dilly's comes down, and she says, oh no, the pizza is overcooked. I better call Fireman Sam. Let's see the next part. At the fire station there was an emergency. A fire at the kitchen? Let's get Jupiter. So they got in Jupiter and go to Norman's house, which is the store. Let's see the next part. They made it to the scene. Dilly says, quick Sam, put the fire out. There is a fire in the oven. And Sam says, okay Dillies, I will put out the fire. So Sam, Elvis, Station Officer Steele, and Penny put out the fire from the oven. Let's see the next part. When they put out the fire is out. Thank you Sam, said Dillies. You're welcome, said Sam, but I'm going to have a word with Norman, because he used the oven when he was too young. Let's see the next part. Norman, I need to have a serious talk with you today, said Sam. What is it? Said Norman. And Sam says, well, Norman, I will tell you. And then he talks to Norman. You were cooking when you were too young. You overcooked the pizza and almost burned down your kitchen. You have to be 30 to cook. You are getting grounded for what you did today. And if I find out you were cooking when young again, then you are not allowed to come to the fire station ever again. Understand? Said Sam. Yes, Sam, said Norman. Good. Now I'm going back to the fire station. Come on, guys. Let's go, said Sam. And they went back to the fire station. Let's see the next part. When Dilly's grounds Norman. Norman Price, I can't believe that you were cooking when too young, overcooked the pizza, and almost burned down the kitchen. That's it. You are grounded for 10 days. Go to your room right now, you stupid boy. Why? And that's the end of the story. Fireman Sam, Norman's cooking show, pizza.